Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are dusting off a business classic from 1987 that honestly feels more relevant now than ever before. The book is called Moments of Truth by Jan Carlzon, and it's this incredible story of how a failing, super bureaucratic airline completely turned itself around. And they did it by doing one single radical thing. They stopped obsessing over their planes and started obsessing over their passengers.
So before we dive in, I want to start with a question for you to just kind of keep in the back of your mind. Think about your own organization. When one of your frontline employees, the person actually talking to the customer, faces a weird, unique problem, are they empowered to solve it right then and there, or are they stuck, totally paralyzed by some policy manual? The answer to that question, well, it reveals pretty much everything you need to know about a company's culture.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to look at why this classic book is still such a big deal. We'll define what a moment of truth actually is. Then we'll get into this wild idea of inverting the corporate pyramid. After that, we'll see it in action, a huge success versus a massive failure. And then we'll wrap it all up by giving you a practical toolkit that you can start using tomorrow. So you might be asking, why are we talking about some airline CEO from the 80s? Well, it's because Jan Carlzon's analysis basically marks the pivot point for the entire business world. The moment we shifted from the product era to what we now call the customer era. See, before him, companies thought their value was in their stuff, their factories, their inventory, their airplanes. But after him, the smartest companies realized that real value isn't what you own, it's what your customers think of you. It's all about perception and interaction. And that brings us to Carlzon's most famous, most powerful idea. He had this incredible insight that a company's entire reputation, its entire brand, isn't built in some fancy boardroom or a big marketing campaign. Nope. It's built in these tiny, little, fleeting 15-second intervals between one employee and one customer.
He called this a moment of truth, and he defined it as literally any time a customer comes into contact with any aspect of your business and gets a chance to form an impression. It could be a phone call, checking in at a counter, even just noticing how clean the airplane bathroom is, Every single one of those moments is a chance to either win a customer for life or lose them forever.
Now, to really grasp the scale of this, Carlzon did some simple but kind of staggering math for his airline SAS. It all started with this number, 10 million passengers. That's how many people flew with them every single year. A huge number, right? But that's just the starting point. He then figured that, on average, each one of those 10 million people came into contact with about 5 different SAS employees during their trip. You've got the ticket agent, the gate agent, a flight attendant, maybe a baggage handler. You get the picture. So you do the math, and that's 50 million moments of truth happening every single year. And this was Carlzon's massive aha moment. He realized he wasn't running the airline. The CEO wasn't really in charge. The company, SAS, was being created, defined, and judged 50 million times a year in these tiny 15-second windows. And if those moments were bad, the company was bad. Full stop. Okay, so if your company's entire fate is being decided in millions of tiny interactions, how on earth do you make sure they go right? Well, Carlzon realized the answer was something really radical. He had to flip the entire company structure on its head. Think about a traditional company, right? The CEO sits at the top, issuing commands that trickle all the way down. Carlzon literally inverted that pyramid. He took the frontline staff, the people actually talking to customers, and put them at the very top. His logic was so simple. He said, their job is to take care of the customer. And management's job? Well, their job is to take care of the frontline staff. The entire organization was rewired to provide support upwards, not command downwards. Now, this whole thing only works if you completely flatten the organization. You have to destroy the bureaucracy that slows everything down. Carlzon's point was that a ticket agent shouldn't need 3 signatures to help a customer with a lost bag. By the time that happens, the moment of truth is long gone, and it's a failure. The absolute key to making this work is that every single employee, from the top to the bottom, has to perfectly understand the company's strategic vision. If they know where the company is going, you can trust them to figure out how to get there on their own. Okay, I know the story is super inspiring, but let's put on our critical, academic hats for a second. This theory was born in the 1980s airline industry. Does it actually hold up in today's crazy business world? Let's put it to the test. Academically speaking, Carlzon's ideas were way ahead of their time. They pretty much foreshadowed modern business concepts like service-dominant logic, and they align perfectly with psychological theories on what motivates people. But, there are fair critiques.
An economist, for instance, would bring up the principal-agent problem. It's this idea that when you empower thousands of agents to act on your behalf, how do you control costs? How do you make sure they're acting in the company's best interest? And really, the only answer is that you need an incredibly strong corporate culture to act as a guardrail. Otherwise, empowerment just turns into chaos.
Probably the biggest critique you hear today is, sure, this works for human-to-human interaction, but what about now? My moment of truth is with a chatbot or a website. And I'd argue the philosophy is exactly the same. Your user experience designer, that's your new frontline worker. That 15-second interaction at the counter, it's now a 2-second page load time. The principle of being obsessed with the user's experience hasn't changed one bit. So enough with the theory, let's look at a couple of real-world case studies that just brilliantly illustrate the billion-dollar difference between getting this right and getting it horribly wrong. First, the success story. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company is basically the modern spiritual successor to Carlzon's sauce. Just look at their famous motto, "We are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen." I mean, that perfectly captures the inverted pyramid. It's a statement of dignity and respect for both the employee and the customer. And here is what that empowerment looks like in real life. Every single employee at the Ritz-Carlton, from a housekeeper to a doorman, has the authority to spend up to $2,000 per incident to solve a guest's problem. And they can do it without ever asking a manager for permission. Just think about the confidence that gives the staff. They're not just there to solve problems, they're empowered to create these legendary customer service stories. And now for the stark contrast, a complete and utter catastrophic failure in a moment of truth. You probably remember this. In 2017, at United Airlines, gate agents were completely trapped by rigid policies. They had zero autonomy, they just defaulted to procedure, and the result was an absolute PR nightmare. The incident was captured on video, it went viral, and that single failed moment of truth, it cost the company roughly $1.4 billion in market value. It's just a brutal, brutal example of the real financial cost of choosing a policy manual over a person. So let's bring this all home and move from theory to practice. What can you do with this? Here's a clear, actionable toolkit inspired by Carlzon's work that you can apply, whether you're running a giant corporation or just leading a small team. It really boils down to 4 steps. First, you have to obsessively map out your customer's journey and identify your most critical moments of truth. Second, you have to create a psychological safety net. Guarantee that no one will be punished for a well-intentioned mistake made in service of a customer. Third, managers have to totally redefine their jobs. Stop checking work and start providing resources. Become a servant leader. And finally, and this is the most important one, provide context, not instructions. Teach your team the why behind what you do, and then trust them to figure out the how. You know, in this age of AI and automation, I'd argue this philosophy is more important than ever. The companies that are really going to thrive are the ones that use technology to empower their frontline humans, not to replace them. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, all business eventually funnels down to one simple thing: H to H, human to human. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Think about your own experiences as a customer. Can you remember a specific moment of truth, either really good or really bad, that completely permanently changed how you feel about a brand? That feeling right there, that's the power we're talking about. Thanks for watching.